Hi everybody, welcome to this presentation. Like many of you, I have attended a lot of conferences and very often I've gone away unsatisfied with the quality of the presentations. And this is doubly frustrating because the people doing the presentations are often very gifted and very knowledgeable, but somehow they struggle to get their point across. With the upcoming OHM event, Observe, Hack, Make, I decided to contribute to this presentation in hopes of helping people do better presentations. It's important to note this presentation is useful for presenting to geeks, scientists and hackers and engineers. It's not very good as a sales tool. In sales, people determine the quality of what you're saying by the quality of your clip art and your font. In our lovely world, we care about the content. Part 1. Why, what and how to present. It is very important to realize that presenting is not telling people what you want to say. Presenting is about telling the audience things that they are interested in and telling them in a way that they really care and pay attention until you're done. Presenting is not about you, it is all about the audience. Some other thing to note, some people have great talent in giving presentations and everybody speaks about them and say, oh wow, Steve Jobs, he was a great hero, he did the best presentations ever. And while that may be true, we're not aiming for doing a spectacular presentation, we're just aiming for doing a good one. And if you pay attention and if you think it through and if you tell people things they want to hear, you don't have to be Steve Jobs to do a good presentation. Presenting is transferring information to build knowledge in the minds of the audience. And it's very important to get this straight. And I made a little picture to illustrate that. On the left, that's you. And in your mind, you have a big building of knowledge. You are an expert. You've built something, you are a leader in something, you've experienced things, whatever. Inside your head is a whole building of knowledge, things you know. And the goal is to take part of that knowledge and transfer it to the audience and to build that knowledge inside their minds. When at the beginning of the lecture, your audience does not yet have this knowledge because if they did, they wouldn't be showing up, which is depicted by the Lego bricks on the right. Your goal is to do the presentation well and build the knowledge in the minds of the audience, which looks like this. And I apologize for the little childish pictures, but they work very well. So this is what you should end up with. So, to transfer information, there are a number of conditions that have to be met. Information must be worthwhile. It must be something that is worth telling. It must be something that makes sense to tell. It must be relevant to the audience because that makes them listen. If you give an audience the wrong message, so let's say you have a room full of salespeople and you tell them about your new multi-threaded database, they don't care. They want to know how can we sell it. The other way around, if you have this room full of geeks and you're telling them how much money someone else is making with your software, they also don't care. So the information has to be relevant to your audience. The third bit is the information has to be understandable. Like I showed in the previous slide with the Lego bricks, you are building knowledge inside the heads of the audience. If you do that, you need to start at the bottom of the building and not at the top. And finally, when you are presenting your information, you are competing with lots of other things like Twitter and beer and other things. So you must make sure that your audience does not fall asleep and pays attention. In this first part of the presentation, we will be looking at the first three items mainly. The first part is the information must be worthwhile. Why are you presenting? And the answer to that question, why, might very well be, well, maybe I'm not presenting. Show up, have an interesting message, find a core of things that need to be said. It's probably a lot better that if you have a few important points to make, just make those important points and leave the rest out. The goal is not to fill the hour or whatever time slot you have with as much information as possible. The goal is to build an interesting building of knowledge in the minds of the listeners. So Spend time on this, figure out why am I here. Here are some good and bad reasons to present. A good reason, well, I once did that. I once did a presentation to get into a conference for free. This should never ever be a reason for doing a presentation. Um, Everything flows from why am I actually presenting. Um, why, from your perspective, might be to tell people what we did last year in our exciting project. And that might be on your mind, and it would be on my mind too. The problem is the people in the audience. If that's your goal to state what you did last year, that's only useful for people that are aware of everything you did except for past year. That's a narrow thing to talk about. Similarly, narrow is we want to talk about version 4.3 of our software. That's also nice, but that also excludes everybody that doesn't know what 4.2 did. As an overarching goal, why to present, a good thing is to promote our project amongst users and to gain developers. That's a good reason, a good broad reason, a good umbrella under which everything fits. And if you figure out the why, from that you can get to the what to present. I said this before and I'll state it again, and I even did a picture to show it. Lots of presentation manuals will tell you that how to present and how many letters or lines of text to use per slide, and that's all fine. And that advice is generally pretty good. The thing is that never compensates for not figuring out what people want to know about. Even with the best fonts and the best guidelines and the best clip art, the best pictures, the best audio, and the best audience techniques, if you tell them stuff that they don't care about, they will not pay attention. So, how do you figure out what your audience wants to know? You need to spend serious time figuring out who your audience is. Who are they? What do they care about? And what new things could I be telling them that really make them pay attention? And overall, the what has to fit within the why. So if the why goal is to gain users for my project, the what will be tell them cool things about my project. So what are the cool things? Well, if you have a room full of security hackers, you should be talking about your security features. If you have a room full of business people that maybe want to use your software, or more business oriented people, tell them how trouble free it is. If you have people that write compilers for a living, then tell how your tool could benefit from better compilers. I could go on and on and on. What you should do so is study the audience, figure out a thing that they might like, and then you invent a title for your presentation that would interest your target audience. So it's really a two-step affair. Figure out what your audience is, then create a title that you think would interest your hypothetical audience, and then build a presentation around that theory. Okay, so now you have the why and the what. Next up is the how. So to reiterate, your presentation transfers information, and out of that information you are building knowledge in the mind of the listener. Like building a house, building knowledge starts at the bottom. You do not start building a house on the second floor before building the first floor. This is similar to me talking about DNSSEC and starting to talk about zone signing key rollovers before I have explained what a zone signing key is. So we do not start building from the top down, we start building from the bottom up. And especially if we are not quite sure if the lower floor is solid, don't start on the second floor, because if the foundation is shaky, the whole building of knowledge could fall down. Expanding on this, first you need to estimate where the ground floor is. What does your audience already know? It's very tricky to be precise about this. So maybe you give a presentation to the bunch of compiler writers. Well, there are compiler writers with beards, and they come from Denmark, and they write C++ compilers. And there are compiler writers that do little toy languages, and those are very different people. And this is very tricky to get right. Work on it. I'll explain later what techniques are available for this. But start your presentation a little bit below of what you think what most people will know. You do this at the risk of boring part of your audience. But a little secret is, everybody in the audience that already knows what you are telling, they will secretly be happy that they know better. And even if they don't know better, they will secretly be happy that you are telling them what they already know. It's nice to get confirmation. So it's better to initially undershoot. So start a little bit lower than you think the audience should understand already. And once you have that foundation, start building knowledge on top of that, layer by layer. And it's really important to note that if you mess this up, if you skip a floor, then you will have lost the audience and they will no longer be able to build the knowledge and they will get bored and start looking at Twitter and Facebook. There are some common techniques to lose the building. That's like using jargon. So previously I spoke about the zone signing key, which makes some level of sense, but if I started talking about the ZSK, I would have lost you already. Acronyms can be very useful, similarly to jargon, but they require you to remember what the KSK and the ZSK were. Bad ordering is what I explained. If I start talking about key rollovers before I have defined why you would need a key in the first place. Too little repetition. You will notice in this presentation that some of the things there are in there duplicate. They are in there with redundancy. That's because if you build the house of knowledge on a single piece of, well, if you build a tower of knowledge and you take out one brick, the whole tower comes down. It's far better to build a pyramid of knowledge that rests on multiple layers. And finally, there's sloppy wording. If I do a presentation on cryptography and encryption and SSL, and I talk about private keys and certificates and public keys and secret keys, and I'm a bit sloppy with my wording, then someone who's trying to latch onto my meaning, and they finally get what a certificate is, and then suddenly I call it a private key. This is sloppy. So even while an expert knows what I'm trying to say, someone who's trying to hold on and gain an understanding, they need consistent wording. I struggle with this one personally, but work hard on it, pick the right words to use and use them consistently. So, losing track. As I said, if you build the house of knowledge, if you lose someone, you never get them back. So they were hanging on to your story, and they lose the middle bit about why you would ever do a key rollover, and then you go on about key rollover policies. And they no longer know why you would roll a key in the first place, and your policy description now makes no sense at all. So you lost the audience, you lost them because you skipped a bit, and you never get them back. It's not quite true. You can sometimes get people back if you do a nice summary at the end of a section of your presentation, but it's iffy. If you lose someone, you better hope that you keep winning the competition against Twitter and Facebook and beer. So it's important to not lose them. Well, to prevent losing people, be light on jargon and acronyms, use consistent wording, add redundancy and repetition. And this very slide is an example of this redundancy and repetition, because this is the most important slide of the presentation. Use graphics as a backdrop to your story. We'll get back to that later, but if someone lost the track briefly, they weren't paying attention for a sentence, if you have a slide with a nice diagram of your project, they may be able to get back in the track because they see on the slide a repetition of what they just missed because they saw a graphic that puts it all in context. It's very important, put subjects in your presentation in the most logical order. So like I said, start building the building from the ground floor. And also be realistic, start at, well, it's not of course precise, but start at 80% of what the audience know and end at 120%. You're not going to teach people general relativity in 1 hour. Be real in how high a building you can build in the allotted time. So this is a common example that I've seen a lot, and this is for real. So the presentation on smart cards that can do elliptic curve cryptography, which is very cool because it's fast and compact. And the thing is, the presenter started with the definition of a Galois field. And I can understand that. In the rare moments that I understand a Galois field, I also feel urged to tell other people about my rare understanding of this mathematical phenomenon. The problem is, people in your audience either are mathematicians or real cryptographers and they know what a Galois field is. They're not waiting for you to repeat that for you. Anyone like me who is not a mathematician and is not really on board with Galois fields will not learn in 3 slides. So in the end, starting your presentation for a bunch of cryptography or hacker people with defining Galois field benefited no one. And this is a failure of figuring out the what to present part, to slot it in with the knowledge that people already have. This is like starting on the 3rd floor of a building and skipping the 1st and 2nd floor. So don't do this. So this is the subject that gets a bit touchy-feely, and we will expand on this in part 2 of the presentation. Information must be fully processed by the audience. It's hard to present, it's hard to transfer the information and to put it in the right order, but think about the listener. You may have spent 8 hours on the presentation, which is the time I typically spend on a 1-hour presentation. Your audience has only 1 hour. They have to integrate all those little bricks of information you give them into the house of knowledge. It is hard work. We like to talk about complicated things, and it's also hard on your listener. And the problem is, unlike you, the audience has a smartphone. And on this smartphone they have all their friends and their family and pictures, and also they can just drift away in their thoughts and think about beer and friends and food and sleep, and this is not all they think of. So your challenge is keep those people interested. So even if you figure out the most wonderful information to tell them, you know why you are there, you know what to tell, and it all fits in their minds. If you just drone and drone on, then it's very possible that your audience falls asleep. So here are some techniques to keep people interested. In bold, make it a personal story. So let's say you have released a new version of your software. You could say it was decided to add a public-private key infrastructure to the daemon so people could sign on without passwords. Okay, that's true, and that's what happened. But now let's say I tell it like this. Well, we were working on the new release and we were approached by this big organization, and they had the problem that all their users had to have their passwords and they would forget them, and it was a hassle, and they hassled us. So we worked with them, and together with this big project we made sure that people can now sign on with certificates, and that makes everybody a lot happier. And also they're no longer bothering us on IRC. So this is the same thing. It's also longer, but people can relate to it. You are talking about I and me and they and them and what happened. It's a story. You can make this even bigger. This is just a small one, but you can also translate your work as a personal story that says we are working on making the best database in the world. And then tell people about what people have been doing with your database. That makes it all a lot more attractive than just droning on about prime numbers. No matter how cool prime numbers are, of course. Humor. This is not for everyone. If you are not a funny person, then it's going to be tricky to be funny on stage. But it's very valuable to spend time on this, because a little joke keeps people paying attention. And if no one is laughing at your jokes, then either you are very unfunny, but you probably knew that already if that's the case, or they're not paying attention anymore. The other tricks are questions for the audience, or questions from the audience. So if you see someone in the middle of your presentation and they have a question, it's pretty good to answer that, because that makes everybody pay attention, and it might tell you that you skipped an important subject. Oomphing it up and keeping it visual. Oomphing it up I didn't invent that term, but it means that on stage for an hour you need to keep it moving along. And oomphing it up, for example, means that when you say, well, we have this data and we compress it, well, use your hands and show people that you are compressing the data. This sounds like an act, but it actually works. If people move on stage, if you visualize with your hands that you are compressing data and storing it somewhere, that keeps it visual. And that makes people pay attention a lot better. Real life anecdotes that people can relate to, that ties in with the personal story a little bit, but tell how people use a feature. Tell them how people came to ask you for that feature, or tell the horrible bug that led you to adding this feature. It's something that people can relate to. And finally, even with the best techniques possible, keep it brief. There's only so much information that you can stuff into people's heads in 30 minutes or in an hour. And should you inadvertently be done early with your presentation, believe me, no one is unhappy with that. If they want to know more, they'll ask questions, and if they are done, they will be happy that they have a few minutes to spare. So don't worry about that. So, wrapping up the process, who is the audience? Ask the organizers of the event, ask previous attendees, look up the past year's presentations, really work on this. What do they know already? What interests them? Secondly, figure out if you really have something to tell these people that might interest them. Another technique I learned from someone else is figure out what you want to present and see if you can summarize your entire presentation in one tweet. So that's 140 characters or 160. If you cannot summarize what you want to say in one tweet, then probably the message is not coherent enough yet. So then from that you create a catchy title that hopefully actually delivers the intended audience. So they know what you will be talking about, and the people that you intended the talk for will actually show up. Then work hard on building a sequence of information, how to replicate the knowledge inside your head in the heads of the audience, and spend time figuring out if it all fits together and if you're not building the fourth floor before you're done with the third floor. And finally, spice and oomph up your presentation so that everybody continues to pay attention. Okay, this ends part 1 of the presentation. Part 2 explains more about how to do the actual presentation with notes on slides and pictures and everything. There are a few URLs here. The first one I wrote myself, which is a text document that has a lot of hints on how to give a good presentation. Most of that matches what's in this presentation, but just a bit more. And the second link is one I took the oomphing up from, and the tweet tip and other things is by Emily Lakdawalla of the Planetary Society, and she really inspired this presentation, and her text also has a lot more than this presentation. So if you can spend the time on it, it's a bit of a long read, but it's very worthwhile. And finally, I made this presentation for the Observe, Hack, Make conference. If you are presenting there and you're worried or you need help, please contact me, and I'm always willing to help people figure out how to improve their presentation or what they should say. And a final tip, end your presentation with a reminder of what people just saw, and include a link to any additional materials you may have, and add a way for people to contact you so that if they have more questions, they know where to find you. Thank you, and I hope you'll join me for part 2.